Hi folks, Benjamin Bergen with the Council of Canadian Innovators. So we're a business council that represents 180 of Canada's fastest growing technology companies. And we were invited here today to hear about opportunities and solutions for how we as a country can respond. And I think talk around obviously removing interprovincial trade barriers is important, but we've got to be pragmatic. That's only one small step. We've also heard lots of conversations here about how we need to expand into new markets because we've got a lot of trade agreements. The challenge is that we as a country actually only sell very few goods, things like oil and gas, wheat. And so part of the conversation that we at the council have been really trying to have here today is that we have to diversify what we sell the world, and we have to be the owners of what we sell the world. Because when you rely on a branch plant economy, when you rely on Volkswagen to create jobs in southwestern Ontario, when you rely on Google and Amazon to supply all of your government services, you're unable to have a sovereign country. And so if we do want to use this moment to pivot, if we do want to use this moment to do something bold, we've got to look at the areas of where the economy is going. Cybersecurity is a tremendous issue. We are experiencing mimetic warfare from the President of the United States. We must respond as we are experiencing mimetic warfare. And so ways government can quickly deploy dollars on things like cybersecurity to domestic firms will create solutions that can then be sold around the world. If we as Canadians are able to actually understand that the goods that we create will be bought because other countries are experiencing the same challenges, we will open markets. We will have goods that they want. We will be able to sell technology that is essential to survive in the 21st century. And so as we have these conversations, I think it's great that the premiers are actually finally talking about removing interprovincial trade barriers. But this is one very small step in a way for us to be able to create real wealth and prosperity in this country. Canadians are 25% poorer than the Americans. We are now 20% poorer than the Australians. We are 20% poorer than the Danes. So it's not socialism, it's not capitalism, and it's not a resource curse. We have to get our shit together and figure out what the world wants and sell it.
What energy do you need to power the AI future? What energy do you prefer that can move fast?
Yeah, so on things like AI energy, obviously it requires a government strategy in order to be able to advance that. So if you're looking at things like nuclear reactors or hydro, those are areas where you would begin to build that. But what we have to think about is how are you building a holistic strategy to solve these problems? Sovereign cloud is essential. If we don't have sovereign cloud, which requires a tremendous amount of energy, which requires a tremendous amount of chip building and capacity building, in essence, we are no longer sovereign. It would be like if we gave the railroad to the Americans when we were building our country. It would be an absurdity. We wouldn't be able to survive if it had to be the Americans telling us what we could or could not run on our own railroads. So power is part of that. Energy is part of that. But also beginning to build the industries that we can then sell to the world will be how we actually get out of this crisis, not just in the next 6 months, but in the long term.
Was that your preference, that you want an investment more in nuclear energy? Is that one of the points you brought up as fastest to getting to that AI future?
So I think, look, building a strategy around how Canada should be solving this actually should be a collective process. What we at the council are really trying to do is raise the consciousness that we actually need to be having serious conversations about industrial policy, where we actually begin thinking about what can we sell the world, what do they want, and how do we get governments to collaborate with our industry leaders that are actually building these firms. At the Council of Canadian Innovators, I work with over 180 CEOs that sell goods everywhere in the world. Those that are SaaS-based, those that are digital, they don't need trade agreements. They flow across borders. They have a much greater ease of them. And so as we're thinking about this moment, where can we begin to build towards the future? And I think that's a conversation we need to have as Canadians. And I often think that this discourse that we have in our country is often overwhelmingly dominated by foreign multinationals. I think the people at the Business Council of Canada are good people. But when you have foreign multinationals sitting in your portfolio of advocacy and lobbying that you're bringing to the federal government, it pollutes it. So when CUSMA was being renegotiated, we had the Business Council of Canada providing incentives that foreign multinationals wanted around things like the digital chapter, so things like IP, data, standards and regulations, copyright. So as a country, we got some real work to do. We've got to clean up our system in terms of the way that we actually talk about these issues. And then we've got to work really hard to figure out what can we sell the world? How do we basically line this up and go forward?
And are they just trying to save the economic furniture?
Pardon me?
Are they just trying to save the current economic growth?
Look, I think that these conversations are essential. I came to this conversation to try and get some of, obviously the message that the business community that I represent believes in, and really trying to bring it forward. I think we've had a government for the last decade, which has been a lot of communication strategies and not a lot of actual substance. And as William Blake says, execution is the chariot of genius. And so if we don't actually have, a strategy that is then executed on, you find ourselves in these challenges. So let's move forward together. Let's come together collectively. But we've got to come together as Canadians to determine what type of economic reality we want. If it's to be colonial supplicants to the Americans, fine. But if we actually want to build our own strong nation where truth, love, and justice matters, now is the time to do it.